Okay, today we're ranking of every quarterback. It's overrated, properly rated, or underrated. So you have your first head coach, Andy Reid. He's coming off a Super Bowl right now. He's probably considered a top two, top three head coach, and I think that's where he should be. He's won two Super Bowls with Mahomes, and his team is almost always competitive for Super Bowl competitive, especially with Mahomes. So I'm gonna say he's properly rated. Then you have Brandon Staley. I think he should have been fired. He was talked about a lot after their playoff loss, but it's been since died down. I think he's a defensive head coach, and for a defensive head coach, their defense has not been that good. I think he's overly aggressive at times. Um, his overall record isn't bad, but he should do more with the talent the Chargers have. I don't. He was definitely like talked of being maybe fired, but since that has died down, so I'm gonna put him in overrated. And then you have Brian Dable. Um, he's he won Coach of the Year, and I think he is that good. I wouldn't say he's underrated since he just won Coach of the Year, but he did turn that Giants franchise around last year. Daniel Jones got much better, but I think it's more Saquon got healthy, and the defense also did really good under him, and I think he's properly rated. People think high of him, and I think that's accurate. You have Bill Belichick. Many people consider him the GOAT. Um, he is probably the greatest of all time, but recently he hasn't been great, um, especially without Tom Brady. Recently, Tom Brady has left for what 3 4 years now, and he did. Um, Belichick hasn't built an offense yet, and for the greatest of all time, you should have an offense by now. His defense is always good, which is great, but you're a head coach, not just a defensive coordinator. So I think he's properly rated, but he's getting close to overrated. And you have Bruce Arians, who's fired someone do that for Todd Bowles. Nobody thinks he's that good. Everybody wants him fired, and I agree. He's never been good with the Jets, never been good with the Bucks. Not and he's just not a good head coach. Good coordinator, not a good head coach, and that's pretty much what everybody thinks. Some put him properly rated. You have Camp Campbell, Dan Campbell. Pretty much everybody. He's a good head coach, but also feeds off his emotions. A tough head coach that has a great physical body. Um, his coaching style is unique, and I think everybody loves him for that. But overall, his record is not that great. But he did do well with the Lions last year. But he is kind of inconsistent as a head coach. Remember, the Lions started off 1-6, and I won't say he's an underrated since everybody likes him, but I'm gonna put him properly rated. You have Dennis Allen. Um, Compared to other head coaches like Top Bowles, I'm surprised Dennis Allen isn't getting as much like his seat isn't as hot because he's pretty much just a defensive coordinator. Did not do anything as head coach with the Raiders outside first year. Hasn't done anything with the Saints, even though it wasn't the most talented. Nobody really talks about him, and I think he should probably get close to fired. So I'm gonna put him in overrated. You have Doug Peterson. He just led the Jaguars to a win over the playoff win over the Chargers, made the playoffs. Even with his tenure with the Eagles, I think he only had like one bad season. His last season as Eagles. Before that, he was dealing with all that Carson Wentz drama, and he does well with his team. He gets the most out of his team. He's good at developing players. I think he's underrated. Yeah, Frank Wright. Um, Frank Wright, he's interesting. He just got hired by the Panthers after getting fired by the Colts, and honestly, people don't really talk highly of him. I think he's a good head coach. He's never really had a quarterback, but his defense has always been consistent. His offense, not the greatest, but it's not horrible. And he wins game. He just never put he just I think it's more of his roster than he is, so I'm gonna put him in underrated. Then you have John Harbaugh, I'm gonna save him till the end. And then you have Josh McDaniels. Oh god. He's not a good head coach. Similar to Dennis Allen, he's an offensive coordinator, not a defensive coordinator. Did not do, and he kind of ruined the Raiders last year. I think then you have Kevin O'Connell. Went 13-4 at the Vikings, and he did do well. He did improve the Vikings defense offense, not defense. The defense got worse, but their offense did significantly better. It was a lot more clutch. But his coaching, he's he's good at crunch time, but Vikings already had a lot of talent, so I'm putting him properly rated. Yes, Kevin Stefanski. I'm surprised his seat isn't heating up. He did good his rookie season, but in his past two seasons, despite good talent, he hasn't done well. Stefanski, I think he's just a product of all the talent the Browns have. He inherited a good, talented team, and he did well with it. And then since then, he's just not been doing good. I don't think he's that good. I'm putting him overrated. And you have Arthur Smith. Um, Past 2 years with the Falcons, even with no talent in the fight in the um Falcons clearly rebuilding. I think Arthur Smith's done well. Won like 7 games with them every single season. Even though the Falcons is not talented, his offense is great. His offense with like Marcus Mariota was not that bad, but his defense needs work. But I think he's a good head coach. That if you get him talent on his team, he's going to do well. So underrated. And you have Kyle Shanahan, usually considered a top 5-10 coach. His scheme is great, but that's pretty much it in terms of Kyle Shanahan. He wins game. He's inconsistent in terms of winning games. He started off bad, and then he's went to the NFC Championship twice. But he's a great schemer. That's pretty much it. So I'm gonna put him in overrated. And then you have, I believe that is Eberflus, the Bears head coach. After 1 year of rebuilding, you could not really tell much. Properly rated. You have Matt LaFleur. Um, people are He did great his first 2 to 3 years, and that might have put him in overrated. But last year, when Aaron Rodgers and the whole offense struggled, I think his stock went down. And now people don't think highly of him. He's not a terrible head coach, but without Aaron Rodgers, we'll see how he does. Last year, hopefully, it was just an off year because how injured the Packers were. But he does have a very good record, and before he was hired, the Packers were declining, and when he went there, Packers went straight up. So I don't think he's bad, but he's about properly rated right now. And yeah, Mike McCarthy. I always thought he was a product of all the talent on the field. Just never feel a competitive, really a Super Bowl contending team, other than his like first 3 years as a Packers head coach, and then there's all that talent, all the Aaron Rodgers. I just think he's overrated. Mike McDaniel, pretty much a typical rookie year for an offensive genius. Brought in a new scheme, won a few games, won a few good games, but then also had a few rookie mistakes. So I'm gonna put him properly rated. Then you have Mike Tomlin. I'm also gonna put him near the end for later. Mike Vrabel, old school head coach, tough head coach. Likes to run the ball. Since he's been there, I think the Titans have been doing a lot better. Last year was not his greatest year, but that was also injuries, and I think he's a good coach that can get the most out of their players. So I'm gonna put him in underrated. You have Nick Sirianni. I really like him. Since he went to the Eagles the past 2 years, they've had a 9-8 record and then like a 14-3 record. It could be just the talent, but he developed Hurts, and their offense got significantly better under him. So I'm gonna put him in underrated. You have Pete Carroll. Uh, Before this season started or last season started, he was not talked about. He was on the hot seat, whether it was him or Russell Wilson. Um, I think it's him now. Pete Carroll wins a lot of games pretty much. He's went to a few Super Bowls, and he's not consensus top 10 pick because he's an old school coach that likes to run the ball and it's not flashy. But I think he wins a lot of games, so I'm gonna put him underrated. Yeah, Robert Saleh. I think he actually did a really good job with the defense, but the Jets have not won a lot of games, which is probably keeping his stock low, so I'm gonna put him properly rated. And then Ron Rivera, um, he hasn't done much with the Commanders. He brought in Carson Wentz was no good. Heineke was no good. Their defense has been declining since his rookie year, and I'm not sure if he's helped or hurt the Commanders team. So, and people still talk about him like he's a above average coach. So I'm gonna put him in overrated. Then you have Sean McDermott. He's a good coach. He wins a lot. He developed Josh Allen. Their offense made the Bills into a Super Bowl contender, um, but he doesn't win a lot of play. He doesn't win the big games in the playoffs, and he makes mistakes he really shouldn't be at this stage of his coaching. So I'm gonna put him properly rated. Then you have Sean McVay. Ooh, usually a top 3 to 4 head coach. Last year it could have been injuries, but since he's come to the Rams, he's just changed the Rams culture, and that's great. Made him a top 3 head coach. But right in the next 2 years during the rebuild, it's going to be huge for how good he actually is. Right now, he's properly rated, a good top 5 head coach, but he can easily be overrated. Then you have Zach Taylor. He never gets talked about for Bengals success. That's probably because his first 2 years were horrible. But I think he has a lot to do with the Bengals offensive output. Joe Burrow's become an MVP candidate, and their Bengals offense has just become a lot better. And it's partly because of the coach, and nobody talks about him, so I'm gonna put him underrated. Then you have these last two, Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin. I think they're both in the similar boat right now. Both defensive head coaches, both have been on their team for a really long time. Mike Tomlin hasn't ever had a losing record ever, which is the most overrated record ever. Um, when I looked at both of these guys, Harbaugh is considered usually a top 5, top 7 head coach, while Mike Tomlin is usually a top 3, maybe top 4. Top 3 is usually Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, and either Sean McVay or Mike Tomlin. And both of these guys, they've had slumps in their career. Harbaugh during the Flacco years almost got him fired. Where Tomlin now, when was the last time the Steelers had a Super Bowl contending team? Like 2017. Um, always had a good defense, but they just haven't. Their teams, to me, their teams just haven't been good enough to be a top 3, top 5 head coach. There there's like stretches where their teams just aren't competitive, and they've always been talked about as a top 3, top 5 head coach. Their defense has always been good, but their offenses have not. And Steelers haven't had a good offense. It's like Roethlisberger's second to last year. Harbaugh's been doing better as of late, but their top 5 head coach, his Flacco years just hold him back. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put both of them in overrated. So there you have it, overrated or underrated for NFL head coaches.